Good evening, Dumelang, Sanbonani, Molweni, Uchande Chela. I am Vumi Msweli and I have the pleasure of being your host for this incredible conversation brought to us by Nedbank Private Clients. This event especially for young professionals. So, like most of you, I have been in my slippers at home watching the Young Professional series taking place. Tonight's a little different. I'm here and I'm very, very excited to be here. I hope you can tell, right? There is so much to unpack this evening, and we're kicking off with a rather interesting topic: financial education and how young professionals are impacted, promoting financial literacy and empowering young professionals to make informed decisions about managing their money, their investments, and debt. Yes, skoloto, debt. We are unpacking that today. And to be honest with you, I believe we have the right people in the room to have this conversation. I am joined by the fabulous, actually rather gorgeous, but not only that, rather intelligent Khanya Mudipa. And what we'll be sharing today is really their insights, professionally and personally. How have they tackled this topic? And we're going to delve into this a little bit deeper. But as we all know, it is the era of social media. So make sure you're joining us and saying hashtag Nedbank Private Clients and tagging Nedbank so that all your questions throughout this evening we're seeing those selfies, we're seeing your thoughts, and we're able to address anything that you are struggling with. So without further ado, let us get into it. To give us some insights, I'd like to introduce someone who we all know has rather vast insights from a finance perspective. We have Khanya Mudipa, and she's the founder of Slay with K Fitness. Khanya is also, wait for it, a qualified chartered accountant who's turned into a digital entrepreneur with many years under her belt, both learning and applying the necessary skills of personal finance to her everyday life. Khanya, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation. I think that there are so many young professionals out there who are, just trying to make sense of their money. And there are so many people, especially in South Africa, who are first-time young professionals in their family, and they don't necessarily know what it takes to, build their investments and their savings and tackling debt. And then over and above that, just getting the right sort of habits. And this is something that I'm extremely passionate about. As a content creator, I have been creating so much online content talking about, what kind of habits you need to have in order for you to be able to get to your financial goals. I think it's great when young people are interested in this and they don't want to get to the point where they're 40 or 50 years old and then they're looking at their retirement, or then they're looking at their debt and they're looking at their savings and they're feeling just so alarmed by the situation. You want to sort of, while you're beginning your career, just have a handle over things. And that's what I talk people through in my content, because I think it's just one of those things that there's just so much smoke and mirrors around financial literacy. And I've obviously had the privilege, being a chartered accountant, being exposed to corporate finance as well as personal finance, to lend my conversation or my voice to the topic.
Yeah. And I think it's a really critical conversation we need to have.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You mentioned financial goals. And let's be honest, as young professionals, what are the financial goals we should be setting for ourselves?
Yeah, so I think when we're young, we don't realize that one day we're going to retire, we're going to get old.
And we'll be young forever, I tell you.
We'll be young forever. Youth is wasted on the young, as they say. But I think it's very important for us to really focus on retirement. In fact, Nedbank shared the statistic that only 90% of South Africans are not ready to retire. And that's a scary statistic to have. And it's certainly something that we do need to tackle as young people. We need to lay the foundation of what does our retirement going to look like, especially now when you have the energy and you are going to make so much more money in the beginning of your career, as opposed to when it's tailoring off and you have less opportunities, seeing, what kind of habits can I put in place right now? And that is the focus of my content as well. I talk about, creating sort of the savings accounts that you need right now so that you don't have to think about it. The great thing about creating good habits is that, you know, if you have it automated, you never have to think about it ever again. And I think there's so many obstacles in front of us, you know, where we feel like we have to, you know, live up to our profession. So finally become a CA and you feel like now I have to have
German car.
you know, you have to get the German car, you have to get the really nice house, and then you forget that one day you might not necessarily have all of that money coming in as an income. But especially now that we're seeing with people, you know, getting laid off, retrenchments are happening, and this economy has really been absolutely crazy at the moment. So you want to be in a situation where honestly you're aware of what your finances look like, you know, you're aware of what your savings accounts look like. And also over and above that, I think it's really good to have just financial goals as a young person. If perhaps you're trying to get married, that you also are aware of your partner's financial goals and whether you're aligned with that, right? But it's
And
more
financial habits as well.
exactly, because you know you guys could both be making a lot of money, but you're spending a lot of money, and that helps nobody in the family. So I think it's very important for people to have that, and then. Also, you know, black tax, you know, it is something where it becoming more in the forefront for us as young people, you know, having to help your family as you are trying to move forward. Like, how do you set those boundaries of like, where does my money go versus where do I help my family? Those are the kind of conversations that we need to be having. But certainly, I think top of the list is retirement. I know nobody wants to think about it. You think you'll never get old, but it is certainly my one of my biggest fears is making sure that I have enough money at the end of my life.
So talking about retirement, someone's
Yeah.
going to say, Kanye, what are you talking about? I've got a pension fund going off, or I've got a provident fund going off. My organization's got me. I'm fine. How do we have that conversation of how do we slot in the retirement annuity?
Yes. No, I think it's always just a good habit to have your own separate retirement annuity. It's great if you have it with your company. And I say to young people all the time, take advantage of the provident funds and the pension funds that are provided by your company, because most of the time they're at a contribution to that. So if you decide that, oh, I'm going to contribute 5%, then they say, we will match you with that. That's free money, okay? And over and above that, it doesn't get taxed, okay? So SARS is not going to put their hands in your retirement money, not yet anyway, at least until you retire. So it really is just a win-win situation. Do not leave money on the table. If your company is saying to you, hey, we're going to match you on that, do that. But over and above that, it is good to have your own separate retirement annuity. Like I said, you might be in a situation where, for instance, you do not have a job anymore, and so that provident fund would have just stopped at where your employer had last contributed and where you had contributed. So you still want to maintain a retirement annuity outside of that. And of course, if you do move from one place to the other, that you're able to move your retirement money from one company into the other. And I just think it's just good and a clean way of being able to handle your finances by having your own retirement annuity.
I could not agree more. And I love the fact that even the contributions we get deducted from
Yes,
SARS.
yes.
Which is what we don't talk about.
We don't talk about that. And I think this is another conversation that financial literacy in schools is basically non-existent. Nobody talks about the impact that tax will have on your life, you know. So I think it is certainly one of the conversations that we also need to have is like, how do you prepare to earn your money, but in a way that is tax savvy?
I love what you mentioned about financial literacy.
Yes.
So, as someone who is rather financially savvy, what is one lesson you'll say, for me, this is the one I've learned when it comes to financial literacy that I think you should be sharing with our audience at home?
I think for so many people, they want to get involved in investments. And I think that's really good, you know, but you don't want to be sort of swayed by the trends, you know, and there's so many different trends that we've seen just in the pandemic alone. There's so many new instruments that have come onto the scene, like crypto, for instance. And I always say that before you invest in anything, make sure you understand that particular instrument that you're investing in. You don't want to find yourself going, I actually have no idea what I put my money in, because this is how you get cheated. And also, when you are investing, make sure your emotions are not in it. This is why, for me personally, has worked wonders, is making sure that each month you have a set amount that you're going to put into an investment account. So you're not wondering how much am I going to put in this month based on what I'm seeing in the economy. No, it is set. It's already done. It's an automatic debit order. And I always tell myself, I'm paying myself first. Before anybody else gets paid, I'm paying myself off first by making sure that I put money into my investment accounts. And when I say investment accounts, it can be something as easy as just going into an index fund, and I go more into detail of what index funds are. But I certainly don't want people to sort of be misled, because, this is, especially online, there are so many people who are flexing and appearing as they know everything that comes to money, and they certainly do not. And you could potentially find yourself in a very, very serious situation where you're losing your money. So you just want to make sure that you research the instrument that you are investing in before you throw your money at something and you're like, what happened to my money? Yeah.
It's interesting when you start talking around the investment piece.
Yes.
And paying yourself first. And I'm curious to know, when you're investing, are you looking at, in case of emergency fund? Is it, for a financial goal, for that car, for that bag, if you're like me?
Yes.
Or
I love that.
what are you specifically starting to invest in?
Yes.
What are those little pockets?
I love this question, and this is a question I get a lot in my DMs. Like, where, I just started, I just got my first 10,000 Rand salary. Like, where do I start? I want to be savvy when it comes to my money. And I always tell people that save for the rainy day first, because like I said, we're living in a very precarious situation right now. You don't know where your next check is going to come. So make sure that you save for the rainy day first. And I always tell people it's between 3 to 6 months worth of your salary that you need to be backed up on. So whatever your current salary is right now, you need to
hear that. Can you say for the people at the back a little louder, please?
You need to be backed up by at least 3 to 6 months, because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where it might take you even, more than a month or 2 months in order for you to find the next job. And so you want to be able to cover your debts as they come, because they're not going to be like, oh, well, shame, you didn't get your salary this month. It's okay. No, they're going to take your car away. They're going to take your house away if you do not cover your monthly expenses. So make sure that you at least have 3 to 6 months. I say that is the first goal. Then the second goal could be going into investment pieces, and there we're talking about retirement annuities, and then we're talking about putting your money into stocks, or if you want to buy property and where you are trying to make an income from that. And then finally we can talk about the Birkin.
How did you know?
Did you know? That, in fact, is an investment piece.
It is.
It is actually. It accrues in value.
I've been trying to explain this. No one believes
so
me.
No, I believe you on that one. It's true.
Oh, I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
So currently looking at young professionals in the landscape, you mentioned it. I just got that first 10,000. Do you believe we are investing enough? Or do you believe we're spending a little too much than we should?
Listen, lifestyle creep is a real thing. Lifestyle creep is a real thing. You want to be flexing on the gram, you want to show, and I understand that. Honestly, I was also taken away by, I'm a chartered accountant now. I need to show the people,
I'm done with articles. They don't know me.
They don't know me, You just want to be the girl, and you want to flex. But please make sure that you have your feet on the ground when you get, especially when you get that first big one, that you're like, wow, I've finally made it. You really need to be careful about things like that. I don't think that people are necessarily investing as much as they should, but it's also understandable. I think, millennials and Gen Zs really get a lot of flack about, you're not investing enough, you're not buying a house and whatever. But we have to look at the economy that we're actually dealing with right now. The cost of living has gone through the roof. Petrol prices, when we look at interest rates, it is really difficult for us as young people to be able to buy a house or even be able to afford your car payments every month. So when you actually look at how much we're earning versus what we are expected to buy, when we look at groceries, it is actually very difficult for you to be able to invest. You're barely keeping afloat. You're barely, and this is what encourages people to think about side hustles, so that they can at least be able to cope with the demands that our current life has. But in terms of investing, unfortunately, people are just not investing enough. If we're not even saving enough for retirement, then for a fact that we're not investing enough as well. And that's actually very concerning, of course, for not only just you as an individual, but also for the country as well. You don't want to have a situation where so many of the young people are unable to afford things and they're unable to, be able to pay back, because that leads us into a financial crisis.
Very well said. And in trying to flex for the gram and trying to say, I'm finally free, people tend to go into debt.
Oh, yeah.
And there's good debt and there's bad debt.
Yes.
Let's unpack debt a little bit.
Yes, yes. So I actually learned a lot about debt when I moved to the United States. So in South Africa, I feel like debt is seen as like, ooh, like a no-go situation. And I think it's good. You know, I think people should just not willy-nilly throw themselves into debt unnecessarily. You need to be quite clear of why you're actually going into debt. But the country that I lived in the US, like they encourage debt a lot. Credit
You get a
cards.
credit card in the
Credit
mail.
cards move like no one's business. You're 18, you immediately get a credit card. And you know, if you do not have the financial literacy to understand what a credit card can do to your credit score, that can be very, very bad. But I will say that, you know, what I have learned is that, you know, as you mentioned, credit can be good, debt can be good, because you do actually want to show lenders, if you go to Nedbank and you at some point maybe you want to get a loan for your home or whatever, you need to be able to show to the bank that you're actually able to pay off the loan, right? And how will they know if you have no record of that? So you do want to get yourself in a little bit of debt, a little bit of debt. So for instance, if you know that you like clothes, go into a clothing store and say, hey, listen, I would like to buy this, this, and this, and I'll pay it over 3 to 6 months. Cell phone is another one of those. So don't get yourself into massive debts now, just trying to flex on the gram. Like, these are the kind of payments that you would be making anyway, you know, and do that. And of course, like, look at your credit card payment details, you know, because a lot of people put money in the credit card, and the credit card companies will tell you like, hey, listen, we're gonna give you this free money, and then you make a little bit of a payment, not realizing the consequences of the interest. So yeah, I think it's really important that people really pay attention to debt.
So it can get a little bit more expensive than how we actually anticipated.
Yes.
So in looking at how you've mentioned, you know, you've clearly had quite an interesting life experience, right?
Yes.
You've been in the US.
Yes.
Qualified as a CA.
Yes.
In your lived experience, what can be done to create better savings culture amongst young professionals?
I think what is really a great way to encourage a savings culture is actually stock files. So it's something that my friends and I think there's about 9 or 10 of us, and we actually have gotten into the stock file thing. And I think it's one of those things that people consider to be for an older generation, but they're actually really great because we keep each other accountable, right? And we're actually using peer pressure, because if you have not paid, people are side-eyeing you, right? Every month you have to pay. Whereas if you are only accountable to yourself, then you're less likely to actually make the savings. So I say that if you have a group of friends and you have a shared goal, whatever that shared goal might be, to gather around and create a stock file account for yourself, and you will actually start to get into the habit and the culture of saving.
Talk about stock files and making the circle bigger. Hello, we are joined by Mr. Tapelatu. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you.
Please introduce yourself. I know you're representing Nedbank this evening, and you're going to give us some great insights.
Oh, yes, definitely. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Tapelatu, Senior Manager, Financial Wellness and Implementation at Nedbank. I'm happy to be here.
So we've been talking a lot about, you know, debt, savings, the culture, and obviously working for a financial institution like Nedbank, you're seeing a lot of how we engage and how well we actually behave. What are some of your insights when it comes to the culture of savings and investments?
Well, I can start by saying, you know, especially for the young people, it depends really on, some are very fortunate where your parents have already taught you to start being very careful about how to use money at a very early age, but some are not having that privilege. And then you find that they find themselves in a space where they just have to juggle, get accounts, get this and everything. So at Nedbank, we actually are very passionate about building relationships with our clients. It's no longer about a matter of just coming to open an account or coming to apply for a loan. That kind of a discussion to get to know your goals, to understand what are your plans for the future, it is the one that helps you and the banker to be able to walk with you so that you can be able to know how to navigate those. Now, from building a savings culture also, we are also trying to demystify the thinking that you need to have large sums of money or wait for a bonus, then only to start saving. We are saying you can actually start with as little as 50 rands. It's not about the amount, it's about the habit. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I could have said it better myself. So of course, as you know, this is a conversation, it's a relationship that we are having. So please make sure you are, of course, asking us questions, tagging us at Nedbank, #Nedbank Private Clients. Let the conversation continue. Whilst you were on that trail of thoughts, I want to if you indulge me a little bit. I'm curious to know, what measure do you believe young professionals manage debt? And is this something Nedbank is actively engaging when it comes to young professionals?
Yes, no, absolutely. So, what happens is that in the conversation that you have with your banker then does a full assessment of what is it that you want and what is it that you are trying to achieve. So, you'll find that a client comes to the bank and maybe they want to apply for a credit card or they want to apply for a loan. What's happening now is we are sort of building a culture of an engagement to understand what are you planning to do, right? Because it is one thing to say I qualify for a loan, but it's another thing is what exactly am I going to use this money for? So that kind of an engagement, the bankers are encouraging that kind of an engagement between the client and the banker so that the banker can be able to guide the client accordingly. So that element is something that Nedbank is taking very seriously.
Okay. I'll be honest with you. We've all been young. We've all thought we were making the wisest decisions. What is the biggest financial lesson you have learned? I'll kick off with you, Khain.
The biggest financial lesson that I have learned is start early. Do not underestimate the power of time. When you are young, you have all the time in you in your mind you think I have all the time in the world, so I'll save later. But actually, it's best to get into the habit of saving, even if you have, as they say, as little as 50 rand. Get into the habit of saving then, because there's that compound effect that happens, and the more time that you have, the more money you're going to actually make in the end. So I certainly encourage people, do not think that, oh, I'll do it 10 years from now, I'll catch up. You won't catch up. It's best to get into the habit of doing it now and then being able to see how your money actually grows into the future.
Well said. Tapelo, what are your insights there?
Very interesting, and I actually like how Kanya actually put it. One of the young professional clients actually, and I'm sure most of us are probably aware, James Clear puts it nicely in his book, called Atomic Habits, when he talks about those 4 laws of behavior change, right? And it's about just being aware of how habits are formed. He talks about the habit loop, right? Now, when you see these 4 laws of behavior change, you see that for something to be more habitual, for you to do it continuously, it must be attractive, right? It must be something that you are really looking forward to doing. It must be visible, right? You can't say, I want to start running, and your running shoes are nowhere to be found. Your gear is nowhere to be found, but you wake up and then you've got your things here, everything is organized. You are most likely to start getting ready and start running. The same, when we were young, our parents used to have money boxes there for everybody to see. And it was easier for them to see, even a 5 cent, you put it in there. 5 rands, you put it in there. It was satisfying this law of behavior change, which is it is visible, right? And the other one, it must be easy to do. Make it easy for yourself. We are in a digital age now. Remind yourself, have notifications on your phone to say, I need to remind myself when I get my first salary or my second income, I need to remember to do a budget. How to do a budget? What's the easiest way to do a budget? You can have a notepad next to your bed. You can do it on your phone. Do it in the best way that you can. There are many different templates of budgets that could be more easier for you to sort of doing. Yeah, I think I managed all of them, right?
Yeah,
yes.
I love that.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's a challenging book. So he was referring to James Clear's Atomic Habits. If you haven't read it, you might want to read it specifically when it comes to your own financial habits. I'm going to share one from my side that I learned, which changed the way I saw finances. Live like a pauper so you can reign like a king.
Love that one.
And it really changed everything for me. So I would live in the back room just so I could get the property.
Yeah.
And I think I'm not quite the king yet, but you're en route.
You're on your way.
It's okay.
With that said, I'm gonna ask you a few questions from our audience. I'm seeing everyone is getting excited on social media, and I don't want to let this opportunity pass. So Lily asks, And I think, Khaya, you can kick off with this one. What are the key steps to creating a financial plan, and how can I get started?
Wow, that's actually a very good question. I think, it's okay to ask for help. I think assuming that you're supposed to have all of the answers when it comes to your own finances is really just unfair. When it comes to your own health, you would go to a doctor and they would give you some sort of plan as to how you can get better at your health. And I think the same should apply when it comes to with your own finances. If you do not have financial background and you cannot do it by yourself, go get some help. I also encourage people to also check out online resources that are available to them to verify that the person who is actually giving them the information is actually giving them the right kind of information. In terms of financial planning, I would say just look at what are you actually making versus what your expenses are, and seeing whether or not, because so many people are living above their means, like what are some of the expenses that I'm currently incurring at the moment that are not necessary. They're, just perhaps something that you can go without, because I feel that too many people have just expenses that are more than their income. So when it comes to financial planning, I think it's also good, as we've mentioned, to also review it quite often, because it changes as your life changes. And as I mentioned also, lifestyle creep happens, and then people think, oh, because I'm making more money income wise, therefore I can improve on my lifestyle, and not looking at the consequences of that as it slowly starts to trickle in, and then you find yourself in debt even though you're making more money. So I would say that definitely get into the habit of looking at your financial plan quite regularly.
Well said. Tapero, this is for you. So Rebecca asks, how are we supposed to manage our daily responsibilities and be able to save if our income is not massive? It is impossible to manage both if you're not earning much.
No, 100%. And I'd like to go back to what Khanya mentioned. It's about being realistic about what the resources that you have at hand against your goals or against what you want, right? Very important to not to live beyond your means, like she mentioned, but more than anything also it's to be more realistic in terms of what you want, be true to yourself to say, what is it that I want? And in terms of what you want, how long will it take for you to achieve it? Be more realistic about it, because sometimes the pressure around, because I'm not saying everybody does, but some you can compare yourself with, oh, this one has got so much and I don't have, and then I start to be more under pressure and acquire more things that I shouldn't really be having. So it's about being more true to yourself. What is it that you want? Being more realistic about that, yeah.
And I think it's also important to add that even with the small amount that you're contributing, as Albert Einstein said, compound interest, the eighth wonder of the world, right? Because even if you start with 10 Rand, in 50 years' time, someone who starts with 1 million, you probably would outdo them just because of compound interest.
Yes. I also just want to add to that. Also, there are many other, I think the rewards world has really, helped us to also save, right? And you'll find that, okay, fine, I may not have enough in terms of maybe my income, but then I go to the shop, taking advantage of all those rewards or opportunities, you'll find that you are actually, benefiting by being able to benefit from them, not to neglect them. If they are asking you, just to go and find out how it works and how are the rewards, and you'll find that actually you're going to save much. And also, from a banking perspective, in terms of the account that you are having, the bank account you are having, go to your banker and ask them to give you a schedule of bank fees so that it shows you, to do a transaction, how much it costs. Sometimes you just come to the bank, open an account, and that's it. But how you use that account will really help you, or how better you use the account, it will really help you to also save by being able to bank more cost effectively as well. Yeah.
Well said, well said. A question, I'm going to throw this back to you, Tapelo, actually. Gloria Sigao asks, is life cover even necessary?
Well, I would say absolutely. Yes, it's about, and it's a question of future planning. It's a question of risk planning. It's a question of us taking for granted the things that might happen in the future. Sometimes things are definitely going to happen in the future. We might lose a loved one or something may happen. So it's 100% crucial to sit with a financial planner like Khanya mentioned earlier, so that you can plan accordingly. And by the way, the earlier that you do that, the better, so that you don't find yourself where it's too late to do all of those kinds of things, because then it will help you to sort of plan accordingly to know, okay, so if I start now, it might have certain benefits for me as time goes on. Yeah, 100%.
Khanya, this one comes for you.
Okay.
What are some beginner-friendly investment options for young professionals?
I am a big fan of the index funds. I really encourage people to look at this Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and if you have access to any other world markets, to do the same. I think indexes are really great because you don't have to actually put much thought to it, because you're basically looking at maybe the top 40 companies in the country that are doing well, and you're diversifying your portfolio. You don't want to necessarily throw your money at one particular company and then see it tank and then see your investments also tank. When you are investing in an index, you're basically spreading your risk, and therefore you are increasing the likelihood that you will do well, regardless of if one or two other companies don't do well. So I'm a big fan of that. And also it prevents you from being too emotional about things. So you see your one particular company is not doing well, then you want to take out your money. But at least with an index fund, you know, it is spread across, so you're not going to get as emotional and you won't take out your money. You get into the habit of every month putting in 500 Rand or 1,000 Rand, and it automatically goes into that index fund without you even thinking about it, because you want to make sure that the habit is easy for you every month.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. I'll throw this to you, Tapelo.
Yeah,
This is a banking one.
Oh.
I've been building my credit card score for the last 7 months. However, I was denied a certain phone on contract, but I have a credit score.
So, how it sometimes works with the credit bureau companies is that the information, your credit information may take a bit of time to update, right? So I'm thinking that might be one of the possibilities, but it's sort of worth looking at that specific case. Maybe they need to sort of sit with a banker for them to understand. But also another thing is that it's very important, and this is very crucial. You go and apply for a facility, it gets declined. Very important to find out why has it been declined. I think it is incumbent on each banker or financial service professional to say, Mr. Client or ma'am, your application has been declined for the following reasons, and what we propose you do for an opportunity in the future is that you do the following. So that can really help, but I would really recommend that they go back to the banker and actually find out. But also, it's got to do with how much the person was applying for as well. Affordability could be an issue, and there's this other element called, because there are two things we look at when we are assisting our clients with credit. We look at your ability to pay us back, which talks to your affordability, income, all of that. But we also look at your willingness to pay. Now, your willingness talks to how have you been in the past? How has your conduct been in the past? When we look at your bank statements, we actually look at your conduct and how are you paying whoever you are paying? You know, how have you been conducting? Sometimes we even check, sometimes the money comes in, immediately it just comes out. Those kinds of behavior, we really pay attention to them. But again, that specific listener, I would recommend them to go sit with a banker so they can really tell them, this is the reason why we declined your application. Yes.
I think that's why it's so important every year to pull your own credit record.
100%.
It's for free,
Yeah.
so you can
Yes.
see how you actually have been performing.
And build the habit of doing so.
Completely.
100%, yeah.
And talking about resources and tools, here's a great question from Amy. Khanya, this is for you. What tools or resources do you recommend for tracking and managing personal finances?
I think what's really nice about us living in the digital age right now is that there are so many apps that are able to connect into not only your banking apps, but also into other financial portfolios that you might have in different companies. And it is able to tell you on a holistic level, like where are you looking? What is your net worth? As we always see with celebrities, this one has 100 million and whatever. You can do the same thing for yourself, and that will actually help you see whether or not you're actually going on the right path or on the wrong path. Because at times, you're just maybe perhaps looking at your bank accounts and it says that, you have a certain amount in your checking accounts, but you're also not taking into account you're not taking into account, for instance, the loans that you have in other institutions. And so you're thinking that you're doing well because your checkings accounts looks great, but then you're actually building up all of this other debt elsewhere. So you need to actually have an app that is able to bring into the fold.
So we spoke a little bit earlier about retirement planning, and there's a great
Yes.
question that says, how much of money should I be putting into my retirement annuities in my 20s?
That's a very good question. So I said first that what is most important is making sure that you're taking care of your savings, your
Emergency fund.
rainy day. Okay, so make sure that you take care of your rainy day. But what usually people would financial planners would recommend to people is start at 10% and also look into the contribution that your company will also be adding on to your pension fund, because it's actually, like I said, free money that you're getting from your company that you should absolutely take advantage of. And because of the privilege, it also depends on what your actual circumstances are. But if you are privileged and you're able to max out on your pension funds, or your pension fund contribution, I encourage you to do so, because then you're not leaving money on the table. And so that can vary for each individual. So I would say around 10% and upwards, depending on what you can actually afford.
Okay, thank you for
Yeah.
that. Tapelo, there's a question here from Lily. Lily, I'm loving your questions. I love how you're so active. Where should I start with finding a financial advisor, and how do I know if I've chosen the right one?
Well, I would first of all, my heart is green in terms of
Yes.
where it is to really come to Nedbank. However, I think the channel that you can use is through your banker.
Yeah.
Then your banker can then redirect you to a specialist who specializes in financial planning. Then they'll be able to do so. In terms of whether you know if it's the right one, all I will say is that we have very skilled financial planners, and it's just a matter of how much you are willing to disclose to them, how much you are willing to say, look, I have got no clue about my situation. I need help. It's got to do with you being very transparent. That's how they'll be able to help you. So that's really how, and then you will then be able to ascertain, because it's a relationship. You'll start to see, are things coming all right? Am I getting the right advice? It will be very clear for you to see. But it's all about really being transparent and also sticking to the plan. If you've agreed and then you said, this is what I would like to do, I'd like to set up a will, be present for the meeting of the will, so those little things, so that you really are showing you're very serious about getting all your finances in order, your future financial plans in order. Yeah, that's what I can
I love
say.
that you touch on wills, because often when we start talking about financial planners, people think it's only about investments. Not realizing your financial planner helps you with estate planning, looking at your will. They will help you with your retirement planning. They'll help you with your savings and investments. They look at your health holistically, not just how much you're going to be putting away. So it's important that we actually touch on that.
100%.
Yeah. Achaya, from Amy here, there's a great question that seems to have disappeared. Let's find it. Here it is. What are the key differences between short-term and long-term financial goals, and how should we prioritize them?
That's a good question. And I think it varies from person to person and the kind of background that you have. For some people, a long-term investment would be maybe getting a car or a house. So it really just depends on you as a person. But I would say, again, like short-term is always making sure that you cover yourself in terms of any situation where where you might find yourself no longer having an income. So ensuring that you actually cover that as your short-term goal. And then long-term goals, really, if you, for instance, like most people will say like get a house as a long-term goal. But for instance, somebody like me who wants to move from country to country, having a house might not necessarily be a very good investment for me, because I don't want to be worried about such a big asset that I have to upkeep. And have to pay, so much interest in, and then I'm not even around to make sure that it actually looks good and would be able to sell in the market one day. So I think it really actually varies from person to person. And I think this is, again, lends to the situation of being transparent with your financial planner and letting them know what kind of lifestyle you have, what kind of goals and dreams that you have envisioned for yourself. And they will be able to guide you and let you know that this based on what your income is, you'll be able to achieve in this amount of time. But this particular particular thing that you want, you might have to wait a longer time. So it really is just about having a conversation with your financial planner, understanding what your current situation is in terms of your income and your expenses, and then being able to determine whether a certain goal is short-term or long-term.
Very interesting question you've given to me now around property. And I'm going to throw this to you, Taban. Is property always an investment?
Not always. Actually, I would like to walk, but I'll need to tread very carefully with this. Wearing my banking cap. However, it also depends, and very interesting how Khanya has put it. I'm hoping that the listeners are really, really taking, because then you can introspect. What do I want? Do I still want to travel? Do I still want to, am I settled now? Can I, some people are, you are happy, you are fine, you're content. Then you want to settle, you want to start a family. Maybe it might be a good idea. You still want to explore the world and you still want to explore different countries. Maybe it's something to really reflect on because you are really talking nicely. However, you probably could, another option is that, yes, maybe I still want to travel, I still want to go, everywhere. And then this property, am I going to be renting it out while I'm away? All of those kinds of things are quite important to consider. So it really depends on an individual.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And talking about traveling and going all over the world, is it better to keep it local is lekker when it comes to my money, or must I just go offshore?
That's Khanya to answer. Just a traveling one.
Where's the Stronger Together podcast spirit here? What is this?
I think it really depends on the economy that you're trying to invest in. Some economies are doing much better than others. I would say that certainly there are certain pockets even within South Africa that are doing extremely well. Like gold would be one of those commodities at the moment that is doing really well because when everything goes shaky, people go back to commodities, right?
Jewelry's safe.
Jewelry is a safe place. But then maybe you want to look into, develop, especially if you're a young person, you have the ability to take risks, right? So you might look at like developing nations and see whether maybe you want to take advantage of companies that are, seem to be doing really well. And then you also want to look at blue chip companies across the world. And again, a financial planner will be able to help you sort of navigate what your risk appetite is. Because you might think that you have a very high risk appetite, but maybe you're just somebody who's like, no, I want to be able to see my money as it comes every month. And so you might actually have a very low risk appetite. And so you don't want to go offshore and not actually know where your money is going. So it really actually depends on the individual, unfortunately. I know this is something that we just keep repeating, but it really is because your appetite might be different to the next person.
Better point. Better your insights there?
Yes, no, 100%. Also, it depends on how much you are willing to open up yourself into. So if, say, you are not familiar with the Forex space, you are not going to be able to participate in it, right? But you develop interest in it, you see how it works, you might grow the risk appetite, you might now be interested to actually get into the space. But I think it's about you opening yourself up into what's out there, logistics, environments, tourism, what exactly appeals to you, what do you enjoy, and so that you don't want to get into a space just for the sake of making money or just for the sake of getting returns, which is good, but over time you want to do something that's not going to take a lot of energy out of you. That's what my boss, Dr. Magwegwe, always says, to say, do something that you really enjoy. That's not going to be a job, just something that's not going to take a lot of energy. Yeah, 100%.
Both of you have mentioned risk appetite, risk appetite, risk appetite. Can you unpack what exactly is risk appetite and how do I determine what my own is?
Okay, so I would say something that you'd like to invest in, and it has an element of possibility of loss. How much of that loss are you willing to, to deal with, right? Some people are not that risk averse and they are not willing to take the risk. So then there are some risk-free opportunities that are available. Some people, they can still sleep at night even if they've lost everything. And they can actually be able to start again and everything and then develop from experience. I'm thinking that your risk appetite might grow as your experience grows. And I think, is it Jim Rohn, if I'm not wrong who mentioned that it's why, why would you like to become what is the real reason you should become a millionaire? So it's not about being a millionaire per se. We all have different goals, but about being a millionaire, it's not really about the end goal. It's about what it makes of you to get there, right? And then you'll find that because of the experience, the challenges, the setbacks that you've experienced along the way, you are now much more willing to take more risk, because then you know how to sort of get back on.
Yeah, and I also think the responsibilities that you have to other people who are depending on you, will determine also your risk appetites. Because if you have many dependents, you cannot just sleep peacefully at night knowing that you're losing all your money, your children's education funds and all of that. So you actually need to be aware of who is depending on you, what kind of impact are your financial decisions having on other people around you.
Well said. It's not just a case of tata my chance, tata my million.
No,
Absolutely not.
no, winners know when to stop.
I love that. So there's a great question from Rebecca, and I'll throw this to you. What is the best asset to invest in?
Ooh, again, I hate to say
Index
this.
funds.
I hate to say no. It really depends on the person, honestly, because again, it depends on your risk appetite, right? There's some assets out there that are going to give you a high reward, but they're high risk for you, and you might not necessarily be comfortable with that. So it really depends on what your risk appetite is. There's this common myth that property is the way to go, and I fight with my mother all the time about that, because it's not necessarily true. It can be so expensive to maintain a property. So it's not necessarily true that just because you buy a house that you are, going to make millions from it. It's not necessarily true. There's just so many factors that could play into that particular investment piece that might make you money, yes, but it might also have you losing money. So I would say that one of the safer bets, obviously, is to look at assets that have a lower risk, because you're not going to necessarily be open to losses, but again, then you might not necessarily get the reward that you want. And I think also your age can come into play as well when it comes to assets. As you get older, you tend to have a lower risk appetite. You're not going to want to throw away all your money that you've been working so hard for as you get closer to your retirement. So you might look into the money market, etc., to make sure that you're not actually losing too much of your money. Yeah.
God might not be making any more land, but you have to upkeep the property.
Yes. The property is expensive, everyone.
I love you say this because I'm a property addict.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, people go shopping for
I love that.
shoes.
I'm
I'm
like
like,
property.
and I'm like, yeah, those are my weaknesses. My first property at 22, and I haven't been able to quite stop since.
Love that. Love that.
We've got a question, Tapela from Tabo. He says, is it still advisable to invest in property currently given the high interest rates as well as our current state of the economy? If yes, the answer is yes. Please provide some tips.
Okay, so I think it's still I think it's worth putting your ear down because there's fluctuations. It also depends on a whole host of things, like Khanya mentioned. Could be even the area where you are at, the property in that area could be that fine at that time. It's investable. The surrounding areas are okay. The market value is growing, but then something happens in that area which probably puts their value down. Maybe say there's a river flowing, but then something happens which is toxic to the river. It can affect the market value of the area. So it's really about doing research, whether is it a good place to do that. But in terms of the current situation of the market at the moment, I also think that it depends. Say, for instance, you want to buy property cash. It could be a good idea. You want to buy property and then you want to get it via home loan. Yes, then the rates, it's something that's quite important. Although, especially with us at the bank, we also look at the rate, which is prime linked, but also related to your risk level, your credit risk level. So it will also depend on that as well. Yeah. So I would think it depends on one person to the next, but it also a whole host of things. You may be good in terms of your personal credit profile and get a good rate, but then the property you are trying to invest in is not really investable because of the area where you are at and all of those elements. So a little bit of research will help there, I think, yeah.
So if looking at that property, of course, like you mentioned, the risk, right? So my credit score, once again, is going to come to the fore.
100%, yes.
But am I correct in understanding that the Money app allows us to check our credit score? Can you unpack that a
Oh,
bit for
yes,
us?
100%. I don't know why I didn't mention this. So, yes, you can be able to check your credit score at any time on our Money app. And you can actually be able to view exactly at what rate you are at. And then you can also have conversations. But understand that just by way of looking at your credit score doesn't guarantee that you probably will get finance when you go to the bank. There are also other elements, your payment profile, other elements like if maybe there were some reversed orders and all of those elements. But yes, you can be able to check your credit profile on our Nedbank Money app, absolutely.
So, audience at home, the moment we finish streaming, we're going straight to the App Store. We are going Money app, and we're going to have a little conversation with our credit to see how's it going, where are we scoring, how are we doing before we start shopping around for properties. With that said, Tapelo, I'd also like you just to delve in a little bit about the money tracker. Unpack, what does it do?
So with a money tracker, really, it tracks your spending, it tracks the activities on a daily basis on your account, and you'll be able to see last month, today, how much you've spent. Are you behind? Are you ahead? It's unbelievable. I would encourage everybody to actually play around with it. And now you want to have some planning to say, okay, these are the regular groceries that and this is where I normally shop. You can sort of start categorizing that on the money tracker. So it's very, very user friendly, and it actually helps you now to be more intentional, to have control over the decisions you are making, and you start to sort of have some goals to say, by the 15th, I should have beat the 15th of last month. I should at least be within budget. You know, it sort of helps you with that. So I would really encourage viewers to be able to sort of familiarize themselves with the money tracker.
Thank you for that. Please keep the questions coming. Hashtag Nedbank Private Clients at Nedbank. I hope you're tagging us. Talking about tracking our money. So we take a look, we track our money, and we realize, the debts, the spending, the investments that I need. What is better? Is it better for me to take all my money and squash my debt and then focus on investments? Or do I straddle the line? Or do I say, I'll sort out my debt later and just focus on my investments?
I think it depends on the type of debt that you have. If you have credit card debt, it's usually very, very high on interest. And so you want to tackle that first. And then you can look at what are your investments giving you in terms of the interest, in terms of the interest income that you're getting, in terms of all the rewards that you're getting or your dividends that you're getting from your investments versus the interest rates that you are paying. For instance, home loans tend to have a much lower interest rate. And so you can straddle the line, as you said, in terms of having a primary residence where you are paying a monthly mortgage over 20 years and then over and above that having investments. You can have that both. But if you have something like credit card debt and it is mounting month after month because it's compounding, so every month that you're not paying your credit card debt, you're going to find yourself having a much bigger balance that you have to pay off. You want to tackle that first before you start looking into your investments. That's what I would say.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you agree? Different insights there?
No, I agree. I fully agree with that. Yes.
So, as we are starting to conclude our conversation, I'm interested to know, in looking in your own personal journey of financial health, what is your biggest takeaway that you'd like to share? Not just the lesson, but if I knew then what I know now, this is what I would do today to change the trajectory of my financial health. I'll kick off with you,
I'll go
Tape.
first. Okay, so for me personally, it was through experiences of other people, right? Where you see situations where people are really struggling and how struggling financially leads to mental health. It affects your mental well-being as well. not generally, you're not really happy, you know. And also there's an element of shame. My boss normally talks that about a lot in terms of now, you know, you can't, you know, do the thing that you thought you'd do for your kids, for instance. And now there's a bit of shame there. So those kinds of experiences of other people shows, you see, just because it's not happening to me at that time doesn't mean it might not happen to me. So that's number one, about how to see that I avoid things like that. Number two, it's really, I would say, about really trying to find out what other people are doing. Like, for instance, I had a friend of mine who was reading books, you know, some business books, you know. So that's how I sort of started reading Your Atomic Habits. It's got nothing to do with finances, but my goodness, it is so directly linked to my financial habits. And then The Richest Man in Babylon. And so those for me really, really went a long way. So, but then it's also about practicing that. And also, now you know what to do. And you find that we actually do know what to do, but it's more about being consistent and having the discipline to actually get into do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to echo his sentiments in that I think that people like to give away their power when it comes to money. You have this sort of idea that I'm not a money person, so therefore other people must handle my money. But I think that is a surefire way to get yourself into debt and having people steal your money from you. You actually need to take ownership of your financial literacy. Schools, unfortunately, do not empower young people into understanding how investments work, how to pay your taxes, etc. So it is actually on you. The onus is on you to take responsibility when it comes to your financial literacy. You do not want to be so dependent on other people that you find yourself not being able to make the right decisions when it comes to your life, because it is your money. So I encourage people to actually, there are so many online resources that are available to them. So I encourage them to do that and actually take ownership of their resources. And again, follow through as well, making sure that they follow through with their goals and they don't just have these goals, but then have absolutely no way of getting to them. Follow through every day and be consistent.
I could not agree more. And talking about being consistent and people being willing to invest, there's one last question, because I like you so much at home, I'm going to ask. And it comes from Rebecca. And Khanya, I'll throw this to you.
Okay.
It says, when it comes to your credit card, which you mentioned is very high in interest,
Yeah.
if you in 10,000 rands worth of debt, is it best to pay it off all at once or a little bit at a time?
Or with a credit card, I would say as much as you can. I know that you might be in a situation where you're unable to make that full payment, but try to tackle your credit card, because that compounding every single month will put you in so much debt that you'll feel like you're drowning, and it affects your mental health as well. You just feel like, I keep paying, but I'm not seeing this thing getting less and less. So actually really try to tackle your credit card debt as quickly as you can, and find yourself in a situation. Now, I'm not saying that credit cards are bad. They're actually very good, because you do get rewards when it comes to credit cards, but make sure that when you're spending money on your credit card, it is actually income that you already have. So if you were going to go to the grocery store and you were going to pay 100 Rand for milk, bread, whatever, and you use your credit card, but you know you already have the 100 Rand in your checkings account, you're basically going to pay with your credit card and then pay back the credit card immediately, so that you're actually, gaining the rapport with your bank of showing that you actually pay your debts. But over and above that, you don't find yourself in a situation where you are now drowning in your credit card debt. So if you can, tackle your credit card debt first.
Yes, Thapela, see,
Yes,
you've got
absolutely.
some
Sorry, I'm
insights.
so excited. I just want
You want to say amen?
Yeah. You know, it's so interesting. And also, so credit cards, it's sort of revolving, right? And it should have been out of the need to get it. So number one, the bank or the financial institution will give you an opportunity to, would you like to, upon review periodically, would you like the bank to automatically increase it? Just be very careful in terms of your own goals and plans. Is it something that you want? Very important. Because automatically now, if the limit keeps on up, and then your income, though, is not going up the same way that your debt is going, because as much as you have got a credit card limit, it's available for you to use, and then you pay it up, it's available again, so it's revolving. But now imagine if even the limit keeps going up and you don't really need it, right? So first, it's about the need for the debt, so that you don't find yourself, because there's unforeseen. I think you spoke about emergencies in the future. It's very important to also think something might just happen where now you have maxed out your credit card, only if you just paid it off. I would recommend, in fact, it's a credit card and also what you call an overdraft facility, which is what you would get on your check account or your current account, as people mention it. It's really about being very careful about those revolving facilities. If you can, try to reduce them to a minimum, and only when you need, then you know that at least the bank can give you an increase of a limit, and then you put it down again. I'd really highly recommend that, just to take care of your future unforeseen.
Yeah.
That's a great insight there, Tapelo. But I'm very curious to know. So I've been hearing some rumors about an essential guide for financial management, which really delves into some of that, which I think is on the way. Can you unpack how do we start knowing this kind of information?
Yes, actually, it's a wonderful book. Everybody can have access to it. It's on our website. It sort of gives you all the different insights. You want to know about more credit, you understand it, about saving, about investing. It will sort of take you on a journey. It's a great essential guide so that you can be able to manage your finances.
So where do I get it?
You can get it on our nedbank.co.za. I just need to also navigate to get there, but you should be able to find it there. Otherwise, we are happy to respond if there's a mail on that.
Oh, that's a good idea. So if you're battling to find it in any one of our posts, just let us know and we will revert back to you with the link to help you get it. I don't know about you, but I have learned a lot. Thank you so much, Khanya. Thank you so much, Tapelo.
Thank you.
And in essence, for me, it has been this. One, know yourself. Know your own risk appetite. Be unafraid to ask for help. Reach out to a financial planner. Reach out to your banker. Have the conversation. Then do a little bit of research on your own to see, is this the actual truth and does it fit in for me? I've also learned money tracker, please. Money app, please. Essential guide for financial planning is something I'm going to be downloading a little bit later myself. With that said, I hope you've learned as much as I have. I've thoroughly enjoyed this evening, gained some incredible insights. So it's a very special thanks to our panelists once again. Thank you so much. And to everyone at home, thank you for joining us. I know data is not cheap, so I appreciate you taking the time and investing in yourself and in your journey. And of course, our next Young Professionals event is happening. Make sure to keep an eye out on all our social media platforms where this conversation is going to continue. With that said, my name is Vumi Msweli. Good night. Goeienaand. Ngithanda nonke emakhaya.